That's the right one, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there it is.
Okay.
I think you guys skip this way a little bit again.
Let's see. Yep, you do.
More?
Cozy.
More?
No, actually, you can go a little bit that way, Bob.
That way.
Just a tiny bit. Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
Did it just start?
We're talking about the war and.
Right.
Oh,
Well, the songs for the war were written before war was declared, but they were based on the 9/11 speech that Bush gave. That was the original song. War was definitely written after the speech that he gave, and that set up the tone for actually God and the Devil, the black and white view of the world, being modified throughout the play by those characters, so that they as well learn from the Job story again that everything is not as clear as it appears to be, or not even learning it, but just acknowledging that again, that religion had transformed once again to include a lot of different things. So Friendly Fire was basically like trying to create a language for the war that would be like a modernization of sort of the Vietnam era.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all just kind of like trying to visualize what might happen to a soldier. And Friendly Fire was actually a really big euphemism in the first Iraq War. I can't remember, Desert Storm. And it actually hasn't come up a lot this particular war, nearly as much as it did then.
No, and we still have that other awful term, which is collateral damage.
Yeah.
Where it indicates that other people that were not part of the war or part of the fighting were killed. Yeah.
But one thing that was really, and I think is pretty successful in the show, is that there's always a sense of trying to balance all different opinions about what in other words, we tried to take as much of our personal opinions out as we could, or at least give this feeling of question. The whole show is about questions anyway.
Right.
The question of why can this happen, and so I thought that worked pretty well. That things really became, and it was great too, is you knew when we were showing the show the first time that a lot of the people there were very religious, and in the very conservative sense of the word, church going, yet they loved it and saw what they wanted to see and what they needed to see for their own spirituality. Yet somebody who was on the other end of the spectrum, questioning religion, would also see what they needed to see, which was the questioning of spirituality as well. I mean, the important thing being that it's a show that's very much about questioning all elements of spirituality, but it never denies spirituality. That's the cool thing, is that it's about faith. The whole show is about faith.
Well,
I think
Joe and
sorry.
Sarah.
Pardon?
Joe and Sarah show two different versions.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Where you were going.
Joe's.
Oh, no, but I'm happy to go there. I was just thinking about in relationship to people from find in it what they want or what they need, what they see. After one performance last summer, this woman came up to me, accompanied by another woman, and she said that her brother had died the month before, and she'd been having trouble coming to terms with that, and that the show really helped her. And then later on that night, I talked to an older woman and said, "Thank you. You've given me some peace. And I wasn't sure exactly what she meant, but both those comments relate to the momentum of the play, which leads toward not only understanding but acceptance.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you were saying about Sarah and Joe. I mean, those two sort of represent the the polar extremes of somebody who's got faith, Joe, and somebody who's got faith, Sarah, but just two pretty different kinds of faith. Sarah is very religious, as Joe says, Old Testament. Like, she's the one that would be very much by the book kind of religion. But she's also very, very sentient, or kind of looks into she has instincts.
Prescient?
Prescient.
Yeah.
She has instincts about what's going to happen, and that inspires her fears. And also she's a really fearful person, yet very religious. But Joe, on the other hand, is very spiritual, yet has no fear.
Yeah.
And
but both of them are very loving.
Yeah.
And that's what unites them. And that's
so much. And that's what people see, and they see. I can relate to it. And most people, believe it or not, probably relate more to Sarah, especially women, than Joe, because he's almost so faithful that it's a little scary. Like, and that's what happens, is that you start to relate to her more at some parts, because, and she says to him, it's you, when she tells him it's his fault that all this is happening. Our children were betrayed by your strong, silent dirge, like the fact that you were just so constant, and that you never get mad, and so she gets mad, and she abandons her faith, more or less, at points in the play, because she's so crushed by the fact that the universe and God can bring this stuff upon her, whereas Joe kind of never really gets there. He gets more faithful as it goes. Like, it only reaffirms that a person who's really strong can survive the test,
But she also is the one that saves him.
Yeah.
At the end, by her return.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, she probably has a deeper journey in some ways than he does.
Yeah.
It's a love story too.
Yeah.
It is a love story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because how do people survive that?
Well, how can you have a story without love? I mean, think of any story. It has something to do with love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Joe's, what was the first thing that we called him? Polytheistic. He's the kind of person that embraces everything. He embraces all religions. He embraces, he's the ultimate sort of new age hippie, gone, stable.
I accept everything.
Yeah, he's right. this incredibly stable guy.
Yeah.
And the fun thing was how far can you push that character? You know what I mean? Like, he's so incredibly stable that there's this really great conflict when you just smash at him, and just see if you can break that down. And I think that's what, we were talking earlier about why this story was so great to work with and just wrote itself so well, is because that conflict was always there in every song, and it was a really great conflict to play. Like, it can make for really heightened moments, and the key to good opera material, I think, is that, like I said, that it's really high stakes things, and that the conflict is of a grand opera nature. So operas tend to be about love, death, marriage, funerals. I mean, those are all the same. Love and death, you know.
Yeah.
And
what's more important?
And taxes, I guess, would be the war. Love, death, and taxes.
Yeah. Wow.
So. And welfare, you know, poverty and status and all that kind of stuff.
So before I ask questions about specific songs, because that could take us a long time to run through.
Sure.
Well, number one, Bob, think about songs that are particularly meaningful to you if you've got a timeline that we're on, and we can talk about those. But the other thing is, where do you see Joe Bean landing? Or what incarnations of Joe Bean do you envision?
At this point, we're going to put out the script for various artistic companies. We're going to retain the rights of refusal, but we're going to send it out into the world as everything that's created has to be gone. The birth has happened, and now the kid has to go out and find its way, find her or his way, find its way. And the best thing to do that is to place trust in the artistic process, which is giving it away to other talented people, and let them see what they can do with it. As you know, it is with any production. We want the integrity of the show to exist. It won't be turned into something that happens on Mars in the 45th century, or transformed to Singapore, although I could see it happening in Singapore, but it has to have that same, the integrity of the show is there, and it's there in the ideas, and it's there in the story. And so the plan is to get it out to various regional theaters and across the United States, we're hoping. And we'll retain rights to all of the intermission stuff, the souvenirs, of course the soundtrack, and charge royalties, which is a great way to make money. But more importantly than that, because Mark and I have not, we're certainly, we both sacrificed materially, but we've grown spiritually, and so we're much more interested in the spiritual aspects of the show than we are the material aspects, making money. We believe in Joe Bean, and we want to see more people that know about it, because it's a show that contributes to our understanding of the world and living in the world with other human beings. And so what we're going to do at this point is accept applications with a little bit of checking, and then when it gets to the point where it catches fire or starts to get contagious and the album sales start booming, then we will perhaps, if it goes down to, say, LA, we'll take over the production at that point. If it goes to Chicago, because ultimately our goal is to get to Broadway. And for me, of course Broadway is the ultimate dream of anybody that works on a show. But the main reason for me is because my daughter lives in New York and she's trying to be an actor, and I really want to spend some time there being with her and hopefully have her in the show. And she will be in some sort of aspect or another, but she's great. Her name is Heidi McAllister. And that's our ultimate dream, is to get it to Broadway.
Yeah.
What happened first time? You went to New York and pitched it?
Oh, Mark, you got to tell that story about the street corner.
Well, I guess the first thing, I can't remember what order, and it doesn't really matter, but we basically went to New York, bright-eyed but pretty cynical too, in some ways, and just sarcastically so, just kind of saying we're just going to go and have fun with this and see what happens. And we know that, that we're not going to go and somebody's going to say, we love your show, let's do it tomorrow. We knew that.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, well, what can we do that'll just be really exciting and fun while we're here? So we're, I guess the first thing is we're sitting there having eggs and coffee out in Union Square, right on the street, and a person comes over to me. I was sitting right on the edge of the sidewalk and pretty open. Person comes over and says, can we interview you? And I said, sure. So they brought over a release and it paid me $1, and then about a minute later, the biggest camera I've ever seen was about 2 feet from my face, and there was a whole film crew standing there, and the first thing they asked is, what do you think about this question? Why do bad things happen to good people? And we just started laughing, and I said, well, I just happen to have a musical that I wrote on that subject, and I had the CD right in my hand, and so I got to talk about the theme of the show.
It was amazing.
And so I don't know what happened to that documentary, but it was all about that question. And so the next thing we did after that breakfast was go over to Samuel French, the biggest music theater publisher in the world, and went right upstairs, went right to the front desk and said, can we talk to somebody about a play? And they said, nah, well, let's see, hang on, I think Larry's here. And
was that his name, Larry?
It was Larry or Jerry. I think it was Larry.
Larry, I think you're right, Larry.
And he's the leader of Samuel French. He's the president of Samuel French, and I think he'd probably be here. He just happens to be here today. So Larry comes out and immediately starts talking to us about the play, and it was so funny and like charming and depressing and caring as he just slammed us into the ground over and over and kept saying things like, nobody cares about your play, and unless it takes place on a small island off the East Coast, nobody cares. And we'd say, well, it's sort of based on Job, and that's terrible. Religious plays will not go anywhere. And and he kept saying this, but also he was kind of laughing, and you could see the twinkle in his eye a little bit. And he was also fascinated by us, because I think you could see a certain amount of maybe something interesting there, but didn't want to get into it really, and didn't really have time for this conversation, but at the same time was compelled to stand there for an hour with us.
Yeah.
And
don't talk to me about this play until it's been produced in New York.
yeah, we're like,
right?
Well, so,
but he kept on talking.
Yeah,
to us
he kept talking to us and giving all these great ideas, and I think it eventually didn't really go anywhere, but at the same time, it was just this amazing experience to, like, he was saying things like, you have just as much chance of success as Howard Mencken did when I knew him when he was a busboy or whatever. But he got smart and wrote Little Shop of Horrors with so-and-so from the such and such theater company. And so his big message was, go to these the gatekeepers of the theater world are these companies that do shows very legitimately outside of New York that can then take them to New York, or sometimes they're inside New York. They're the theater company, and this is who we're looking for in terms of Joe Bean and who we think will be interested in. Those are the people that do shows that are original, that can take them to the level that they need to be at,
right,
artistically, structurally, to be perceived and to actually be the kind of shows that could go to that kind of level.
And people that want to do shows that have substance and depth, not the frilly, silly musicals that just are kind of feel good and there's nothing there.
Yeah, that's their job, is they inject it with whatever they need to make it work. I mean, if you look at that Avenue Q, I mean, that could have been a really no substance show, and they figure out ways to make it, to give it the range it needs to be a Broadway show.
The cool thing is we've already got the substance.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for us it's mainly, finding just the right fit, and the interest being there to do this show and them seeing it. And that's why we spent so much time being from the opposite end of the world, from the little island off the East Coast. We are from the absolute opposite corner, if you don't count Alaska or Hawaii. And the only way that we're going to be seen, and we're pretty aware of this, is to have something that is pretty darn complete. And so we've spent the last 3 months in the studio, putting this, like he said, I was laughing. He said, why don't you just put together a synthesizer demo like everybody else? And I was like, that's not what this is about. I mean, this is already well beyond that. It's, the only way that anyone's ever going to care is if this thing is completely realized on the level that they hear it on Broadway. It's got to be there, and because nobody's going to care, and we're totally aware of that. So that's why.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
But I think the great thing is as I have done, and I know you have done, you've got a friend, you got someone that you know, and you say, hey, listen to this with me.
Yeah.
And as soon as you do, they're hooked.
Right.
They're loving it. You turn up the sounds, and the story carries you away. Mm-hmm. And people that don't even know it, they're there. Oh, in fact, Richard, he played it for a Hollywood guy who's kind of a hongo agent. Did I tell you this?
No.
Yeah, and he played the whole thing for him. They were on the way out of L.A. toward Pasadena or some way. Mm-hmm. And I didn't tell you this. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the guy listened to it all the way through. Mm-hmm. And he loved it. And he said, that it's got part of that thing that goes on in a lot of great musicals where one song hooks into another.
Yeah.
And that's the way that you know more about this. And is that the way Weber writes, where one song is a prelude into the next one, and you get this whole sense that the whole thing is unified? But yeah. Richard thought it was an amazing comment, because this guy is such a cynic.
Right.
Yeah. And of course Richard is behind us.
Right. We've had so much support.
So close he breathes down our necks. Yeah.
We've had so much support from people on the island that, I mean, that's why we're still talking about it a year later, is because of the fact that we're actually supported spiritually, financially, to be able to keep doing this, because people believe in it so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I told you about going over to Bonnie and Phil's. I came in there one day and here their little girl had on Joe Bean, and she was listening to it on a tape recorder with another kid. And then Richard drove it in the driveway, and he had the soundtrack on. Yeah, it's definitely at that point now where people are really wanting it to. I think they'd be disappointed if it just died. I think they'd be really disappointed. Oh yeah. Because people said, we are behind this. Go, and they put that into action, for us. Yeah, and I told you about the shy 9th grade girl that came up to me and said, Mr. McAllister, when will the album be out? Mm-hmm. Because I saw Joe Bean last summer, and I really can't wait to get that music. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, you got about a month or so. Yeah. And I'll certainly let you know. Yeah. But she was caught. She saw the show once, and the music is still in her. Yeah. Well, I think this is I cannot say enough how much I think the reason this is such a great play is because of your choice of story. Like, I think that is the reason that this thing worked.
and why we're sitting here right now. Because I've written 15 shows, and they've never had the kind of story that is so universal and so grabs people.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really, and also I think the other reason that we're sitting here is because of the fact that you are so good at selling the story to people as they sit in your truck and listen to it, and you describe it and lay it out for them, and because the hardest thing I think about this whole idea of being an artist writing musicals or directing musicals is you're taking a really big vision and you're trying to manifest it. So it's like building a house.
Yeah.
It's like talking about building a house as opposed to here's the house.
Yeah.
Check it out. How do you get from there to there?
Yeah.
And you know, it's so esoteric. I mean, people really don't care. People here wouldn't care. You know, forget New York. But if we couldn't talk about it and make it infectious, nobody would care.
Yeah.
In fact, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, so the fact that you've been able to and the show has been able to sell itself.
Yeah.
It's really incredible. And so, like, you're talking about goals. What would you like to see done with it? I mean, for me, the big goal is I want to see everybody have the chance to hear this and decide whether they like it.
Right.
And when I mean everybody, I mean I want this to be in Hindi. You know, I want this to be, you know, in
Spanish, certainly.
Spanish, French,
Yeah.
Chinese. Yeah. I mean, I want this
Yeah.
story and these songs to, you know, to be at least. So I guess for more than anything, it's like distribution.
Yeah.
I want this sucker to get out there.
At the end of the show, when we did the high school version, in line with what we're talking about, it comes to this realization that the universe takes care of us, that we are in the universe, and the universe is as it should be, and it's acceptance of the world. And what we did then at that point, as it reaches its conclusion, we had the universe takes care of us done in, what did we use, like 38 different languages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, translations of that phrase. And it was quite beautiful. Even without music, it became a chant, and you could hear all of these different languages coming together, interlapping, interweaving, intermixing. And that's of the world, and it embraces the world. And in embracing the world, we embrace the universe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Wait, we'll just.
can we pause? Do you want to go on that one with the little boy, say? Or sticking with the show? Or
Well, yeah, because no, that's pretty much. Yeah, because like some shows, Little Boy Goes to Hell, I've written that 5 times, and you know, I mean, this is actually more than anything. I think it's been really quick and easy.
Yeah.
In some ways. Like
Yeah.
we've been working hard, but that's just work.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, you know, this struggle to try and get it together. I mean, it was pretty much together. We're just working on the details.
It's been so much fun, though. I mean, every time you go back to it, I still get tears in my eyes. We were talking about the finale, you know, when Joe comes to his apotheosis. And every time I listen to that, I get tears in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I listen to Sarah sing at the end, and I hear Friendly Fire, or I hear there's a wide space between words, and there's something that hits me within my chest, and it's holy, it's sacred, it's we are in connection with something larger than ourselves, and any time art, theater can move us to those places, that's what I really want, and that's why I know that Joe deserves to be out there, is because it can transport us to another world that is yet our world, the world that we live in, and the world we have to live in.
Yeah.
That's why I love it, because I mean, I listen to some musicals, like I listen to the West Side Story, and I mean, it's, you know, it's amazing, but I am not moved to tears. I don't, again and again, and it doesn't. I don't think it has. I could be wrong, but I don't think it has to do with the fact that both you and I, you know, worked so hard on it, and it certainly we've invested ourselves in it. But for something to come back to when you know it so well, and it continues to move us, to change us from one place to another, to transform our feelings, and to make us realize the magic of living and the importance of love and all of those great emotions that exist within humanity. That, I mean, there's something so important there that we don't want to just let it go. That coming back to it each time is like visiting your grandmother.
Yeah.
Or your mother. Each time it's different, but it's lovely.
Yeah.
Each time in its own way.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a blackberry pie or, you know, a peach cobbler, whatever it is, it's still great.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Sticking with. Okay, sorry.
No, I think I would love to hear about some of the individual songs and how they came about.
Great.
So
Great.
I can either like take a little pencil and you guys can start from whatever moves you.
Wait, don't you have a list of songs up there? Or do you have a list?
Yeah, she does.
And I have.
Perfect.
Do you want it?
No.
No, you should just ask us, I think.
Yeah, great.
But do you want to do it in order? I mean, you've talked a little bit about Friendly Fire and stuff, so. We can
Yeah, I think in order is good.
Okay.
Easier.
So I call the first one To the Market because I don't know what it's called.
Yeah. Kundalini Yaya.
Yeah. Well, that song was pulled from one of my favorite kind of spontaneous little bits. It wasn't spontaneous, but I mean a little bit that came from the when he goes. It was pulled from when he goes to the therapy session in the second act, where it's these kind of this kind of new age setting, this very little bit uptight, but also very, very touchy feely, and they're saying Yama Yama Pizza Rama Vishnu wish you peaceful mana yin yang paddywhack Hari Hama this little piggy went to market mama on and on and on Yam Nam Nyoho Renge Kyoyo. So I tried to make this chant for these people to say, and what ended up happening is I started liking those lyrics so much that I started writing more and more, and pretty soon I had like 4 verses of lyrics, and I don't know, it just seemed like that set the tone for the polytheistic Joe, and also the invocation of every god in the universe to come down, and God and the devil, and to have this sort of war in heaven over this guy in a way, you know. So it was pulled, a little bit of that was pulled and put at the beginning and put over my original overture, just put right over the top and sung in kind of chant style. And plus it goes to the masks element, and the second part of the show, which is when they say our masks are only masks, which is basically him kind of realizing that these spirits are going to take both human form and spiritual universal form. So I don't know, that chant kind of sets the tone for who Joe is and what his world is like. And it's also, I was at a party and I was telling them about Joe being this French girl, and she said, I just said a few sentences about it, and she said, she says, why do these things happen to him? And she said, did he put a spell on him? Was it a spell? And I said, yeah, it was a spell. Basically, is what happens is that his mantra creates a spell, which creates the whole play. So that's a
diversion too from how it first started.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Can you talk about that?
yeah. The very first time I did the overture.
Yeah. I think we decided that we wanted to get right into the story immediately. And Joe Bean is the center. God and the devil are not the center. God and the devil are centers of many people's existence. But ultimately, we as human beings have to live in this world. And so it's Joe who is the center, who is among us, who is with us, who is one of us. God and the devil, by definition, are something other than what we are, even though we contain them. And so our push has been, our momentum has been toward more and more focusing on Joe and his world. And again, that's illustrative of the history of religion, the history of theater. More and more, there's an emphasis upon the common man. And there's been that great shift that happened that Harold Bloom says, Shakespeare introduced the modern consciousness through his plays. That suddenly there's an awareness that real human beings can be poor, that they can be derelicts, that they can be ravaged, but they are still human. The other thing I like about the opening, it's harmonic convergence. It's the idea that, and they did this about 6 years ago. Do you remember this? They had people on the East Coast, people on the West Coast, and they started singing in all the voices, and then they recorded them separately, found out that they matched. We're talking about some sort of universal consciousness that ties us to the universe. It's Jung's, what is it, the collective unconscious.
Right.
And that's what operates in the play. And that's what I love about the beginning, is it's a tapping into a vein that's there, that if we can just reach into that and make it resound, then it happens. It's like when I did Little Shop of Horrors, we did the reason that Audrey comes to Earth, that Sporer comes to Earth, is that all these people are slamming on garbage cans. What was that? Was it Stomp?
Stomp, yeah.
Yeah, Stomp. And this girl had seen that show. So I thought, okay, what a great way to begin. I'll have people yelling at each other, and then I'll have people beating on garbage cans. And then all of this sound starts to happen, and all of these very normal things start to happen. And then suddenly, here comes a flash of light, and here comes this being from outer space named Audrey, the giant spore that then becomes something. So that's another reason why I'm just so, the idea is just great.
Yeah.
Because out of the finite world comes infinity. Absolutely. It's there. All we have to do is find it and tap in.
And it's not necessarily God and the devil doing a marionette job.
Right, exactly. And we had thought about that before. Did you talk about the idea of the puppet thing?
Yeah, well, it kind of comes from the idea that the question for the director is, whoever directs this show, or us as we've created it and then put it out there, is visually, how do you show why, what's the control, like who's controlling it? Is it gods? Are the gods God and the devil? And you can do that. You can do the show like that, and we've done it. In fact, the last version we did had a 6-minute piece where they described the bet. And basically the bet was the devil wanted to see if you tested a guy who thought he was the most spiritual person in the world, that eventually you could get him to commit suicide. And that was the bet. And I still think that's a really strong bet. It might come back again. But at this point, in the CD at least, you just focus, the puppet factor of this whole thing isn't quite there as much, because we're letting just the story tell itself through. But with the addition of one piece that we've already written, that person can throw that back in, you can put the bookends on it, because the characters, God and the devil, and all the gods play all the other parts anyway. So they're throughout the whole show, as in my mind, homeless people, and like as Anne said the other day, that there's the devil can be, that she threw out about 5 different, couple things that the devil could be, and it's like, yeah, I mean, those characters are just part of the manipulation of him throughout this play, and I don't know, sort of a
But
dead end.
the history of human beings has been continually of trying to understand and trying to decipher and divine the forces that seem to take existence out of our control. At the very beginning, floods would happen, no food,
Yeah,
and people would somehow say, "Okay, God is doing that," and therefore we have to somehow establish some sort of communication.
yeah,
And increasingly, as science and the Enlightenment is coming in, we've realized that there are causes for things. What's interesting is that in an age of science has had a way of turning back toward the spiritual.
yeah,
And Einstein's thinking about
yeah,
something else being there. I mean, there's always a sense that there's something that we cannot quite understand. And
yeah,
that's Joe too, and that's the way the play
yeah.
ends,
Hmm.
without giving firm, this is the way it is.
Very much. Yeah.
And okay, that's all I wanted to say. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, the Joe Bean song. Just
Oh, good.
how fast did that
Yeah.
come together?
Yeah, why don't you talk
How
on
did
that
that
one
one
since that. Yeah.
Well, basically that I love that song because it's really surprising when you see that this character is, and I think it's even more surprising when you have the bookends of God and the devil taking somebody who's an everyman. But when you really see what an everyman this guy is, it becomes really surprising. Like his first words are surprising. I'm not really that religious. Where in the Bible, he's the most religious man, right? And so he says, I'm not really that religious. I'd say I'm more spiritual. My wife's actually the religious one. I'm just, she's pretty Old Testament. And then they say, and I like what the chorus is saying is they're saying, he's the luckiest, wealthiest, sickeningly modest, stable, religious, Buddhist kind of guy we know. And he goes, no, wait, I'm not a Buddhist.
Right.
But I do think the universe takes care of me. And I don't know, it's just...
In a Zen sort of way.
In a Zen sort of way. Like, basically, yeah, he is. So it's kind of like... it just seemed like a really smart character. That's why I like that song, is because it just seemed like it was like a guy that you could really like right away because of of his philosophy. Like, it was so... It's basically like you're setting up a character. Wow, it's gonna be hard to break this guy down because you're saying this guy is almost like Superman spiritually.
Yeah.
Like he says, I'm not afraid. I have no fear of anything. At least I'd like to think so. In other words, he puts a little disclaimer in, and that's even human.
Yeah, and if you put your minds to it, you can do anything.
Yeah. So it's great. That's where the song came from, and then
my family keeps me going.
Yeah. And then Bob, I think it was Bob's idea to set it on the way home from work on the ferry, and it was like, well, that totally made sense because that started to root it in like reality. Who is this guy really? What does he do for a living? How come he's rich? All this stuff, and we leave that pretty vague because it's fun to play with that kind of stuff, in different versions of it. So. What was it?
Oh no, I was just gonna say Bob was saying my family keeps me going, and it does. I mean, it just ties him into it's not it's not money and it's not success. And
yeah, he's got something else beyond that. Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah. That was good.
Okay, well the next thing that is on the CD now is Last Summer's Flowers.
Oh yeah.
Well, Bob wrote that one, so he should talk about it.
The song, and it's so beautifully sung by Kelsey Mack, and I listen to that every time, and it still gives me shivers. Because, and it's the whole play, and it's that idea that every play reflects the whole play. Because she's singing about last summer's flowers and how they're gone now, and the season is changing. and the season is changing is a premonition of the change that's going to happen to Joe. He's going to go from summer, as it were, into winter, well, into fall first, and but she still plays in the leaves, and she kisses the earth, and the earth is so cold it sings, and it's something that can be so cold and yet can still sing, is what music is. You're cold, you've been deprived of stuff, you witness the destruction, but you still sing. You still put your faith in music. You still put your faith in raising your voice.
Or resonates too.
Yeah, and it resonates. And she
thing.
kisses the earth. She embraces the earth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's a being.
Yeah.
Right?
Gone to seed. Well, it's just an important... it's a foreshadowing, and also it comes back. That song comes back after she's gone, which is what's the main reason we had to have that song in there, is because that's the only way. Like Joe Bean sings it again once she's disappeared, and or he sings it, I should say, and so it's a song about death, which is kind of ironic too, like he said about the fall.
Yeah.
And
but it's also this lovely moment when he's been so proud of his daughter.
Yeah.
Singing, and as he sings it, her disappearance sinks into him, and he can hardly bear to sing it, but yet he has to sing it because he loves her so much, and then by singing the song that she sang, he brings her back. But yet it's such a, I can only imagine what it would be like to lose a child, but I know that it happens over and over and over, and has happened over and over. And so anything that happens to people is necessarily a subject for art.
Are you getting little stripes from the audio? Like if I go like, no? Okay.
Yeah, that's good, right?
Yeah.
That's picking up. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, next one. Afraid.
Ooh. Why don't you go on that, Mark?
Well, that's when you start to realize that Sarah is pretty different from Joe, and deep. She's a really deep woman. She has a deep voice, and she's like deep. She's also she's got that weird combination of fear and premonition. In other words, she's got the ability to see, to have what I mean is she's got the combination of maternal, and I think when we're talking about religion, that's the religion that we've gotten away from, the maternal earth religions. Yet she's very, very, what's the word for religion these days, in terms of the male-oriented religion? She follows patriarchal. Okay, let me say this one more time. She's got a weird, strange combination of the maternal and the earth religion, in that she's got premonitions, and then she's also got she's very embedded in the patriarchal religion, and she's also very fearful. So she's got a lot of depth, and that's what I think is really cool about that song, is that it kind of just goes boom right into her, and so that you realize it's Joe Bean and Sarah Bean, and plus Carla singing it, and she's got just such a good voice.
Yeah.
Her voice is better than butter.
Wow, that's a good phrase.
Caramel.
Yeah.
Oh, the cool thing about Carla is that she sings very, very quietly, and yet you can hear just worlds in her voice.
Yeah.
And she's so good and so experienced.
And the diction is so exquisite. I mean, it's Frank Sinatra in a female form.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
Rich man.
Oh, let me say one other thing about Afraid. The other thing about this song is musically what it is a combination of Patsy Cline, Lutheran hymn, and spiritual, like gospel, and because that's an important element. There's a lot of gospel in this thing that gets introduced later, so it's kind of like a way to creep into the gospel a little bit. Rich Man is not actually the next one, but we could talk about it.
Oh, okay. I have it.
It's actually now.
What is it, the wedding?
Yeah, the wedding.
The wedding.
Yeah,
Okay, well, let's talk about the wedding.
Yeah. Well, Scott's in the Army Reserves, and he's about to be sent over, and as all of us do when we realize the possibility of death and disappearance, he gets married. He grabs on to life.
That's Joe's son.
Joe's son, Scott, yeah. And he decides to marry his Muslim bride, Shahira. I think that's currently her name, isn't it? Shahira?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, of course, the wedding is held in a polytheistic, all-embracing church with...
Well, it used to be a church. Now it's a multi-purpose center.
That's right. Much chanting. We imagine those rushes that get rid of bad vibes there. And Joe and his family are there, and the Muslim family of Shahira are there, and they're there to celebrate a wedding, the ultimate expression of love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of crazy, and they do love one another, and it sets up again. You know, if there's something, well, there is. Of course, Joe goes from here to there, but also Scott goes from here to there too.
Yeah.
You know, and that's again.
Yeah, you get to know
the way
these
that
people.
The play's themes just keep on mirroring each other.
And also the devil character, I love what she says. She kind of sums it up. It looks like the house of God is subdivided. Condos for rent, all utilities provided. So basically, this really hammering on this theme that they're just so inclusive, you know. And then of course Sarah has her 2 bits. She gets to say, "The Lord will guide your coming in and your going out."
Yeah.
And that song was basically created while I was listening over and over to the chants of the Hare Krishnas. It has a lot of call and response and that kind of thing in it.
Yeah, and that call and response stuff is so great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's fun. It's like I have a voice and you have a voice, and you say this and I'll say this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
And then I love the at the end of after they get married, wax and wane.
Yeah.
Again, is a reinforcement, another mirror, another prism through which we see rise and fall.
Right.
And in fact, one of those lyrics is "We rise and fall,
Right.
we wax and wane," which
Yeah.
is a candle increasing in light and then decreasing in light.
Yeah. And I think that song too is, well, one, it introduces EJ, the guy who plays God. 2, it introduces for the first time really, really well the poetry that starts to come into the show, which is stuff that's not quite as pop. You're going to get it in 5 seconds kind of stuff, but stuff that you could really think about, like more metaphorical stuff. And I think that like those 2 things meeting the idea that it's a genuine love song, and right in the beginning is really kind of neat. Like if you really get into the beans, that's going to be an important song for you, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
The more you get into this play, the more that's going to be a favorite.
So you added that song, well, both of those songs, the wedding song and Wax and Wayne. Was Wax and Wayne written specifically for this, or was it a piece of poetry that you had?
Yeah, that was written.
Can you remember?
Well, yeah, that was written during the time when you were just cranking out material for this, based on
the themes and the ideas.
Yeah.
But, sometimes I'd write something that was just in line with the themes, and you say, like, I think with Wax and Wayne, you said, God, it's perfect for the wedding.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, no, seeing it, like, for the wedding came a little later. But it was written as, like, it's just, like you said, all the songs relate to all the whole show.
Yeah.
And Wax and Wayne, Rise and Fall, we suffer love, suffer pain. It's all about the same stuff over and over and over. But telling it in a lot of different ways. And it's funny that they're singing it too. It's like reflective. They're reflecting on what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of cool, because they probably are singing it like happy, joy, we
right,
rise and fall, everything's great.
Yeah,
and then it happens.
Yeah. But so many times we sing things, we don't know really what we're saying, kind of like the same way that we say prayers. And the one that I always said was, if I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. And God, the generations of kids that went to bed thinking, am I going to be dead in the morning?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, so it's the difference between hearing the words and understanding the truth of what they are. It's like there was a girl in my brother's astronomy class. Did I tell you this one?
Mm-mm.
Girl in my brother's astronomy class at University of Washington, and the class had been going on for not too long, about the third day, and he didn't really know her, but the professor was down on the solarium floor. And they had a replica of the solar system, and here was the sun in the center and all the planets, and there was relative distances, and I think it went out maybe 30 feet on each side, and each planet was distances from the sun. And then he paused and he said, the nearest star is in Japan. Given this relativity of the whole solar system is in this room. And Lee listened to that, or Timmy listened to it. And then he could hear the girl trying to suppress sobs, and looked over and her shoulders were shaking. And he's a sensitive guy, so he didn't say anything on that day, but the next day, or the next time they had class, he said, I couldn't help but notice that you were crying yesterday. Are you okay? Is everything okay with your life? And she said, when he said that the nearest star is in Japan, I suddenly realized, I suddenly took it completely into myself, how alone we are in this universe. And how great the distances are between any other source of light other than the one that we are all connected to and chained to, and which provides the whole base for our being. And it struck her so much that she took it completely inside of herself. She had an understanding that was beyond, and that's what we're talking about with Wax of Wayne, is you can say those words, but until you live them, and that's what Joe Bean is about, is he lives through what he'd only seen as an abstraction before.
Yeah.
We have 3 minutes on this. So is War the next song? Or
What is it?
Yeah, no, it goes into the whole war sequence.
Oh yeah, War. Didn't we already talk about that?
We did talk about it.
Yeah.
But just talk about
Okay.
that you had it in, then you took it out, and then.
Yeah. Well, the main thing for me in putting it back in is such a great song. I mean, the rhythms are so surprising, and it's so rollicking, and yet we're singing about destruction and war, which is the scourge of humanity.
Yeah. Well, it justifies why he gets his building blown up. Basically, Joe does this very sarcastic war protest. At least that's the way I see it now. You could take it a lot of different ways, though. But he kind of goes off on this. More or less, it's. I lost my train of thought.
Every war.
Tongue-in-cheek once that he was kind of doing the tongue-in-cheek version of talking about.
Actually, what I was going to say too is, we got so much crap from people for taking it out. Like, because people really said, that was like a really important song for the show, and so basically we just put it back in and realigned it again so that it wasn't an extra song anymore. Like, made it more crucial to the plot.
The thing I like about it too is that it sets up Scott's death.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it shows why he's in friendly fire, and also, there's all these potentials. Like, you could show him going away. Is it over?
Yeah. Well, it's got 1 minute.
Oh. He's going away to war at the same time as Joe's protesting war. There's a conflict right there.
Mm-hmm.
He's basically Joe's now started to create some enemies, we think, in that he's not only did he just do this huge sort of Muslim polytheistic wedding, but he did this sort of very theatrical protest, and it's kind of like, well, the two of those things lead to the second part of war, which is, as Bob says in the narration, you throw bombs in the air, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so his building gets bombed, and that is his loss of all of his material possessions.
And what has been the story of war, but people going into it with complete fervor, adoration, enthusiasm, and then the bodies start arriving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, it's the story.
Yeah.
Absolutely.